All right, thanks for tuning in once again. It's Ishmael Sistrunk from the St. Louis American and STLamerican.com here today with our Rams Roundup correspondent, Palmer Alexander III. Palmer, how's it going today?
I'm doing okay, man. Just hanging in there, man. Just hanging in there today.
All right, well, of course, we want to talk about the St. Louis Rams' epic victory over the Oakland Raiders last week, which was just ridiculous and crazy, far from anything that we would have imagined. But we'll get to that first. Palmer, being from St. Louis, both you and I have had the pleasure of meeting St. Louis Post-Dispatch sports columnist Bryan Burwell. Got the bad news this morning that Bryan passed away after a short battle with cancer. Palmer, you knew Bryan much better than I did. Tell us, how has this news affected you, and just tell us a little bit about Bryan.
Yeah, I was deeply saddened, when I found out this morning about that. Brian has always been very supportive of me ever since I joined the St. Louis American back in 2004, and he was just always somebody that I can bounce an idea off of, or a story or concept, or back in 2009 when I was having problems with the Rams PR department with Ted Cruz, and the way that they was, the way that I was kind of being singled out. He was right there by my side, and he always, made himself available for me, and I really needed that. I don't have a lot of colleagues who I can really be able to call on. I got Earl, which I really appreciate. I got yourself, that I can, that we build not just a team, but we build a friendship and a kinship as brothers, and trying to, navigate through this, navigate through the media. So he meant everything to me, and I'm deeply saddened by that. And I know he's going on to a better place. And matter of fact, our birthdays are like 3 days apart. We're both Leos, so I can't express enough my sorrows for him being gone. But I know his wife Dawn is going to miss him well, and his daughter. So like I said, I'm just really sad about it right now. I'm still numb. I'm still numb.
Yeah, and like I said, you knew him much better than I did. I did have the pleasure of running into him a few times out there at Rams Park, and had some discussions with him. And just a very nice, genuine guy, a class act, if you will. So we definitely send our condolences out to the family of Bryan Burwell, to his colleagues as well. And St. Louis really lost a really wonderful sports columnist. I was a guy who always read Bryan Burwell just as a fan of his, and I really appreciated just the talent that he had writing. He wrote in such a it had such a style to it, the verbiage that he used, and I really always appreciated that, the creative, the artsy side of the way he wrote. And of course, he did a lot of social commentaries as well, but just a really talented guy, and it's you hate to see a guy that passes away. So condolences out to Bryan, condolences out to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch staff, and St. Louis fans really lost a good sportscaster.
Yeah, I remember when he came to St. Louis in 2002, and I was excited because, that was a paper that I read, but just, watching it for so many years on HBO and doing the inside NFL stories, and then, reading him in the USA Today. So, have a guy like that with that kind of resume in your own backyard was big. And I think about now, while we're talking, I think about he was also embroiled in several controversial stories throughout his career in St. Louis back in 2003. When Brendan Warner called up the calf, and that's about Kurt Warner's hand injury. He was on air with John Marisak when that went down. The thing with Rush Limbaugh, the big firestorm, when he wrote the story about Rush Limbaugh, and how toxic that could be if he became owner of the St. Louis Rams a few years ago, and that was a big firestorm. So he's done a lot of things. He rubbed some people the wrong way, but he enjoyed it. That was part of his job. and just the way that he was able to articulate his point. Very colorful way of doing it, and that was what really was impressive about him. The way he can articulate things. He always told me, he said his key to success for being a great writer was he reads a lot of different writers across the country. And he told me about a few writers, and I've been following those writers every much of the day because he knows exactly what he's talking about, and that's what I loved about him so much.
Yeah, and I think it was a shame, how the there are always trolls in the mix, and there were trolls that always came out for every Burwell article, and I think that's a shame, now that he's gone. But again, we just want to send our condolences out to his family, to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, his colleagues, his friends, and just to his fan base, because we lost a great one. All right, Palmer, getting back to the St. Louis Rams here. The Raiders coming to town. This, I think, was the first time where we both picked the Rams to win, and both were correct. But the way that they won is what was so shocking. 52-0, 38 points in the first half. Where did this come from, Palmer? Because I expected a victory, but I didn't expect it like this.
Yeah, me too. And it's one thing, and I know people say, well, they beat the Raiders. They only won one game. But listen, there's a way that you win. But then when you dominate in that fashion, 38 first half points, that's pure domination. And that's how you want to dominate a less opponent instead of playing down to their opponent. And that was one of the things with the Rams, with them being inconsistent, all season long. They would get up for Seattle, they would get up for Denver, and then, they would play down to a Minnesota Vikings team. They played down to a Dallas team that was struggling early on this season. So they took care of business against the Raiders, but they did it in an emphatic way. I mean, coming out, throwing the football. I mean, aggressively throwing the ball. They didn't throw the ball a lot, but they came out throwing the ball and, keeping the Raiders on their heels. And they executed, greatly in the offensive scheme plan. So it's something for them to build on. But I was shocked and pleased, and I'm still watching that game to this day, Ishmael.
I can tell. The offense was on fire. Sean Hill, 13 for 22, 183 yards. Not huge numbers, but 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He was only sacked 1 time. Trey Mason, again, had a big game, 14 carries, 117 yards, including an 89-yard touchdown run, which is actually the second longest in franchise history. This is Trey Mason's second game in the past 3, eclipsing 100 yards. How important is he to this success of the St. Louis Rams?
He's very vital. He is that home run threat that I always talk about. He's able to get outside, run outside on the perimeter. He sees the crease, he takes off forward. I mean, since Jeff Fisher been here, we saw Isaiah Pede and Darrell Richardson and Zac Stacy, and the Rams have been looking for that home run threat and running back, and now it appears that they got it. He's gotten it down the passing game. He's a weapon down the passing game. He caught a 35-yard touchdown pass, so he's very important to this offense. And you know what? Since Brian Quick went down, that shoulder injury, not only just him, but Stedman Bailey and Tavon Austin and some of these other guys have been getting more involved in the offense, and now they're starting to come together.
Yeah, Stedman Bailey's really stepped up. He also had a 100-yard game, 5 receptions, 100 yards, right on the dot. And you talked about it, Mason with 3 touchdowns, 2 running the ball, 1 receiving. Zac Stacy got in late in the game, 6 carries, 27 yards. He hasn't gotten much work here of late. But to me, Stacy still looks a little bit off. I mean, it's a 4.5-yard average, which is pretty good, but he just doesn't look like the same back that he was last season.
Well, something, I think when you watch Trey Mason, you look how fast that he hits the holes, and then you go to Zac Stacy, who's not that type of back. You notice the difference. I think the difference is speed. and the way that you attack the holes. Zac Stacy kind of runs a little low to the ground. He always keeps his feet kind of pitter patters when running on turf, and he's looking and searching for holes. And I think that's the big difference between those two running backs and their style. But he just doesn't have that extra gear. But I still think he can still help the Rams in short yardage situation because he's small and he's big and he's a load himself.
Now, what about the Rams defense? I mean, they made Derek Carr look pretty bad. Looked like a Rams quarterback has historically looked. He was pulled late in the game for Matt Schaub, who didn't look any better. How was the Rams defense able to really control the Raiders offense, especially in the passing game, or is it just that the Raiders are that bad and they made it simple for the Rams?
It's a combination of both, but I love to give the Rams some credit on this. One, I mean, the front four was outstanding. I mean, this line from the defense has just been playing phenomenally these last few weeks. In the game against the Raiders, they had 6 sacks. They had 3 interceptions. They forced 3 fumbles. They recovered 2 fumbles. I mean, that's filling up the stat sheet, and everybody was really getting involved. Chris Long got his first sack of the season, and he recovered a fumble, another big sack by William Hayes. He had a death in the family about a week ago. I thought to go out to him and Eugene Sims. They both lost people in their family, but they both played extremely strong. And that rotation's come together. And you know what? I think they missed Chris Long a lot more than they really thought because he was really on fire and making things happen. And that rotation that they have in that D-line right now is making them pretty formidable to go up against now.
Absolutely. What about the Rams special teams play? How would you grade them?
With the exception of the muffed punt by Tavon Austin, listen, special teams were strong. I mean, Johnny Hackett didn't allow any returns at all. Did a great job with directional punting as he normally does. And Zerline, again, doing a great job with kickoffs. And the coverage was great too. I mean, Oakland had a rookie back there, Atkinson, returning kicks, and you could see the inexperience on him. But the Rams took advantage of that opportunity. Thanks to those great kickoffs and thanks to the great coverage by the special teams.
Yeah, and this is strange, Palmer. It's weird because I'm used to you kind of going off on somebody, telling me who's not doing their job, who, fell off here or there. But when you win 52-0, there's really not much that you can gripe about. I mean, the Rams, like you said, clearly dominated the entire game. And it's another one of those games where you're excited and you're like, man, this is awesome. We've been waiting for this. It's frustrating because you think, well, what could this season have been? They sit at 5-7 right now, but they dominated this team like nobody else has, and have shown flashes of playing excellent football. It's just sandwiched between some bad football as well, and some bad breaks. So how do you think the Rams will do you think they'll be able to keep their momentum from such a big victory?
This game against Washington this Sunday is really a big test for them. Despite Washington record, I think they are 3-8 or 3-9 at the moment. The Rams are going to have to keep that same mindset. I mean, they haven't won back-to-back games all season long. And in order for them to get over that hump, they know they're going to have to win 2 games in a row, and then get 3 games in a row. So you don't get you don't get to these long winning streaks until you start stringing some victories together. And that's what this team is attempting to do. So they got a real big matchup on the road against a Washington team who is, again, on paper very beatable. But will the Rams continue their raised level of play on both sides of the ball, in the East against the Washington Redskins?
Okay, well, before we jump into the game with the Washington team, as I'll call them, let's talk about the Rams again in Oakland. When they had some of the receivers, and Jared Cook came out with the hands up sign, which has become a symbol of solidarity with the Ferguson movement. They came out, had their hands up. and there has been a little bit of backlash from some people in St. Louis. Did you feel what did you feel about that, about them doing that?
Well, I was glad that they did that because a lot of people have said to me, where are the Rams? Why they not saying nothing? Why they not making a statement? And accusing the Rams of not caring about the community, which is not the case. And I've talked with artists before a few months ago. I said, how you guys are dealing with this whole Ferguson situation, and they are dealing with it. They're trying to find ways to deal with it. But I think across the league, they really don't want players speaking about it. But by the players sticking their hands up, coming out of tunnel, they sent the message. I have no problem with it. My problem is with Jeff or Oda. Pinning that ladder and thinking that the Rams should apologize. They don't have a damn thing to apologize. They the ones that open up Rams Park, when those kids didn't have a place to practice with all the mayhem happening in Ferguson. So if anything, they should shut their mouth and do a better job of being trained better and listen, help build some relationships in a community. Okay, so while city is burning, remember this: the city of Ferguson was burning, but the Rams opened their doors. I think they got their priorities all the way mixed up in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to go too much down that political tangent, but I did like that the Rams players were courageous enough to do that. We know the NFL has fined people for sillier things, and nowadays it seems like it's just less common for athletes to take a stand, especially which has some political leanings like this one does. We see players worried about their brand. We see players worried about their endorsement, and they just don't take a stand like they did back in the day. It is interesting, though, that the Washington Redskins, who we are playing this week, they came out with the same gesture earlier in the season, and they were not really met with the same type of opposition out there, at least not that we heard back here in St. Louis. But I agree, man. It's interesting that that police organization will come out and try to force the Rams to apologize, try to bully them for making a symbol that just means "don't shoot me." That's all it means. It doesn't mean I hate cops. It doesn't mean all police are bad. It means please don't shoot me. We want justice. And for them to come out and threaten a boycott or demand an apology was just ridiculous. And I'm glad that the Rams held their ground. They said, we're not apologizing, we're not punishing, we're not suspending or fining these players for making that gesture. So I was glad to see that some sensibility prevailed there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and listen, I mean, a lot of that stems from the police association. That's their own guilty conscience. I mean, that's why that's coming out, because of their own guilt. But listen, Tim Tebow had his own thing. He bowed. He had the eye black with I think Romans written on it. Remember Chris Jackson when he played with the Denver Nuggets, when he changed his name to Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, turned his back when the national anthem was played. So I mean, they need to. I mean, please, man, they need to do a better job of prioritizing. This is not the first time professional athletes have expressed themselves silently. So let them do that, and let's move on.
Exactly. I agree with you wholeheartedly. All right, let's go back to the Washington Redskins. Again, they are 3-9, I believe. Yes, 3-9 is their record. Do you think the Rams will be able to take advantage of them? We know they've had some quarterback controversies. They've gone through, 3 different quarterbacks. I think that we know that RG3 has now been benched, is not starting anymore. How do you think that will play into the Rams' favor, just that QB situation?
I think all of it plays in the favor of the Rams, but it's just a matter of can they be able to replicate their past performance against the Raiders and even be able to pull some of the good things from that San Diego loss. Now, I guess one thing, if you want to nitpick at, they did have 9 penalties in that game, but I mean, you scored 52 points, like you said. What you going to complain about? But I think on the road, they can't afford to go into Washington with 9 penalties. This team is ripe for the picking. and right to be beaten. But the Rams can't beat themselves, and that's why I say this is a big test for them. Ishmael, they 5-7. Should they win this game, this will put them at 6-7. And then they have a chance to play against the Giants to follow. The Cardinals, a big division matchup against the Cardinals, and then they have a chance to maybe even their record. So I think the Rams are fighting to one. They want to be able to show they can be consistent, win 2 games in a row. Then the next step is to get to 500. Then the step after that, get over 500.
Now, what's the Rams' best strategy to come out with a victory? How offensive-wise, how should their offense attack the Redskins' defense and expect to have some success?
Well, I think the way that the Rams started against the Oakland Raiders, it was like a wow. They came out throwing the ball, being very aggressive, doing that. So, Jim Haslett, former Rams defensive coordinator, he liked to throw some exotic things, towards opposing offenses. But Sean Hill's been around the league long enough, so I'm anticipating the Rams to continue to attack, and they're building something special with Stephen Bailey, and you see Mason and Tavon Austin becoming more and more part of the mix. So they got the ability to put the Washington football team away and be able to allow the defense to pin their ears back and attack Washington, because Washington's really suffering on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, Palmer, and I'm glad you brought that up because I almost forgot about it when you talked about Tavon Austin. The reverse paid off, man. When I saw him get that reverse play, I thought about Palmer. I said, man, Palmer is going crazy right now because they always run the reverse. It never works, and it finally worked. Tavon Austin getting to the pay dirt.
Yeah, hey, it worked. They finally handed it to him, and I think the big difference with that was it was a quick handoff. They handed off to him while he was in motion, and that was one of the things they didn't do a lot of. Normally, they would hike the ball, and then the defensive line and everybody else is reacting, and then they're already waiting for Tavon. This time, he was in motion. It was a quick snap. They hand the ball, and that is how you make an adjustment. Good job, Brian Schottenheimer, with that in-game adjustment.
All right, Palmer. Now
I gotta wash my mouth out, man. I gotta wash my mouth out.
It's pick time. So you told us what the Rams can do, what they should do, how they could win. Will they win?
Yes.
I sensed the long silence, the unsureness in your voice there. You're telling me coming off a 52-0 victory that you are skeptical of this team, Palmer?
Yes. Yes, I am. I mean, they beat the hell out of the Denver Broncos, 22-7. But then they lose to early in the season to Minnesota. So I really don't trust them yet. This is a trust thing. They got to win my trust back, Ishmael. So until then, I'm going to be very skeptical about picking them. So I give them the slight edge in this game, 22-19.
And I'm going to say Redskins 19-17 because I just don't believe it yet. I don't believe it. Hopefully they can make me a believer, but like you said, they haven't won back-to-back games yet. They're going on the road. I'm hopeful that they can win, but I just can't pick them until we see it get done. So very interesting. Anything else that you want to talk about before we sign off, Paul?
No, you just listen. I think the Rams have a good chance of finishing above 500 or at least at 500, which will be impressive because of the way they started. You look at all the injuries and all the things that's been happening around them, just inside the locker room, let alone what's going on outside of our city.
Yeah, and my last thought that I'll say, we've already talked about a little bit of social issues, so I'm just going to touch on it a little bit. This week I wrote about Charles Barkley, his misguided comments on the Ferguson, on a lot of situations. I want to line Barkley up. Barkley's a big guy. Let's line him up as a tight end. send him on a pass across the middle, and have Alec Ogletree just take a good shot. You know, we saw Ogletree make a big hit this last game. Let's send Ogletree just one time. I don't want to harm Barkley, but let's see if Ogletree can knock some sense into him a little bit.
You know, as much as I would love for Black Ops to knock some sense into him, what I would love is to sit Barkley down and let him watch the '93 finals again. That's what I would.
Now that's cold. Palmer, right there. I was wrong, but you just cold with that one. All right. All right. Well, we thank you guys for tuning in once again. I'm Ishmael Sistrunk with the St. Louis American and STLAmerican.com here with Palmer Alexander III, and we are signing off from the Rams Roundup.